Getting sore. Okay, so welcome everyone to the Radiant Leaders Summit. I am so excited to invite Brandon, who I met at the World Happiness Summit this year in Costa Rica. I know that you currently are living there, but you're originally from the States. So to me, you're representing the States and being like a conscious coach, American conscious coach. Your title is actually mindful leadership coach and a holistic wellness consultant. And I just really want to invite more conscious coaches onto this summit. And so you were one person I immediately thought of. I'm so excited about the topic that you chose with today, which is how to become a master of your own body intelligence and truly live your most authentic life. Welcome, Brandon.
Yeah, good to see you, JD. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So, what do you have to share with us today?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you invited me to speak on the summit, one of the first things that came to my mind was, and I'll give you a little bit of a backstory, which a big part of my work is really centered around body intelligence and really helping people better attune to their own body's internal intelligence and wisdom and how they can form decisions off of that and how they can essentially create their life and their schedules so that they can ultimately thrive whenever it comes to living this beautiful thing of life that us humans have the opportunity to experience. So just to kind of bring a little bit of kind of an example of this in action, whenever you and I met, a couple months ago prior to this, and we connected, and you extended the invitation to me as a possibility to speak on this Radiant Leaders Summit. Immediately, my body felt like, this is interesting. I'm open for this, and I told you, I don't know if you remember, I said, you know what, this is interesting because you're catching me at a time where I have previously maybe have been a little bit off of social and some of these different aspects. And in the same breath, just tuning into the present moment and what my body was communicating in that moment when you extended an invitation, which for me was a yes. And the reason I bring that story up is because um, oftentimes in our society and oftentimes in the day-to-day when people are working or taking care of themselves or doing their responsibilities, it can be extremely head centric, you know so you have a task to do or you have a to-do list or you have some type of schedule that you're operating from. Whenever people ask questions or whenever you have things to do, if it's 100% head centric, then what I recognize can happen for many professional leaders is that they ultimately can experience a sense of frustration, overwhelm. And if they continue to experience this for prolonged periods of time, it can ultimately lead to burnout. So, in a nutshell, that's what I really want to tap into because I feel like we're at a really interesting time in our evolution as a human species and our just dynamic of being able to really have even more body centered awareness when it comes to decision making, when it comes to energy management, and also when it comes to authentically communicating. So that's maybe a little bit of a subtle texture as far as what I would like to explore with you. And yeah, I'm open. I'm open, and I'm excited to share more with those out who are interested in this topic and wanting to learn more about it for themselves.
Yeah, can you imagine a world where the big decisions are made in the present moment, dropping in to what resonates, if it's a strong yes or a strong no? Because we tend to just be so stuck in our head. And I feel like there's so much wisdom in the body. Just the presenter before, Crystal, that's her talk is about living in the now, being in the now. And as an entrepreneur, I used to have so much anxiety for the future. And now I'm in this reframing of like living in the wonder of every moment, like every day is unexpected and unknown, and making decisions from a really solid central point. So I love that you brought that up, and that you have this example just about the summit of making decisions.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting because as you are mentioning for yourself, JD, this sense of being really centered, the key aspect that I have recognized not only for myself but for different clients who I work with as the kind of the foundational piece as far as being able to even assess this or harness this or tap into these different layers is really ultimately rooted in slowing down. So it's
Mm.
like a slowed down productivity. And it can oftentimes feel or bring up a lot of internal resistance, maybe fears or aspects around not enoughness or aspects around what am I going to be losing if I, slow down, because the human mind is just so wired for comfort and wired to continue to do whatever it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. So if you think about, someone who maybe I've worked with a lot of high achievers, individuals who tend to, they are, I don't want to say go, go, go bunnies, but they're very driven. They don't need someone to really hold their hand. And what oftentimes can occur for these individuals who are kind of, have this propensity to work and to play in these ways is them over scheduling themselves, and at the same time them frequently feeling overwhelmed or anxious or having these aspects around performance anxiety, because there's this tendency, what people will communicate is that they want time and they want more space. And then what can end up happening is two things. One is an aspect around having the possibility of having more time and space, but not being able to cut off this thing that we have called the mind. And it can be very chatty and just very much going a million miles an hour. And the second aspect that can happen is this piece around having the time and the space, and then feeling very rattled by having that space, and then adding more things on top of the schedule within that space that ultimately leads into this cycle of feeling overwhelmed, feeling overscheduled. And, within my own story around this, the reason I'm so passionate about this work is because I've been someone personally who has experienced, the mental fatigue, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the multiple bouts of burnout. And it really wasn't until there was a real deep slowing down. And on my end, frankly put, being supported by someone else who could see me for a period of time, that I was able to see some of the blind spots that I myself had around certain patterns, certain behaviors, certain beliefs that I had that was ultimately creating the condition that I truly didn't want. So from that experience, it really, I had this light bulb in a sense that went off for me personally, as far as um, having this period of time of really, I would like to say, rediscovery, discovery as to what it is that I truly want, discovery as far as what's working for my body and what's not working, whether that's nutritionally, whether that's scheduling wise, and ultimately a discovery of really tapping into and understanding on a deeper degree, like, who am I and why am I here on this planet, you know? And when individuals start to get to that particular level within their own journeys or their own evolutions of maybe asking those questions or looking a little bit deeper, that's when they are primed to really have a breakthrough. And the breakthrough being, as I mentioned before, this aspect of ultimately slowing down. So if you're open for it, I would love to share an image that I have come across that I recognize many people may relate to. based on what we're discussing.
Yeah,
Let me
go.
see if I can. Let me see if I can find it. I was hoping it was going to be, well, we'll do this and see if that works. Oh, there's quite a bit there. So this, can you see this image in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
This is the high achiever burnout cycle. So we're just going to go through this. I think this is a really a beautiful distinction and illustration of what a lot of different individuals who again may identify within the high achiever route, what they may experience. So if we start at the top, we have the overloaded plate, where we just have so much on our plates and there's so many things to do, and there's this certain aspect of you know that being leading to the aspect of burnout, which goes to the second degree. And then from burnout, we go down and you see we get rid of things. Okay, we're tired, we're exhausted, and we recognize there's way too much on my plate. So you know what? I'm gonna let go of things. I'm gonna take this off the schedule. I'm gonna sleep a little bit more. I'm gonna do my best to ultimately get back to a level of homeostasis or balance. So then we get rid of those things on the plate. We reduce stress and we have this, like this is so nice moment, this moment of like, wow, okay, like I've gotten rid of these things and I have space. And your body, whether or not you're consciously aware of it or not, your body is responding to that and it feels good. There's some level of some inner sensation or feeling of really enjoying yourself. And that may show up at times like vacations, or it may show up at times sometimes on weekends, or when you're doing aspects that you enjoy that really takes you out of that overwhelmed capacity. And then from there, you have this wow moment in this sense of space. And then you feel the itch. You feel the itch to feel your newfound spare time with something else. Because it's like, okay, I need to do something. I need something else to activate. And then what you end up doing is you fill that spare time with aspects, and then and that leads to an overloaded plate again. So what occurs within this, I'm gonna share one more image here. Let's see if I can put this up. I'm gonna stop share and I'm gonna share kind of another dynamic. Let's see if we can pull that up. There's a key distinction around how one can break up this particular behavior, this particular pattern. So this is where we want to change our behavior to stop the cycle. It's in between this aspect of having the space and then feeling the itch to fill your time with something else, you know. So the, just to kind of direct on the actual hallmark here, it's just like there are growing pains when you add extra items to your plate, there are also shrinking pains when you have less to do than you're used to. And all that would mean is just there being space. So the question is not how much can I do, it's how much can I do while retaining X. And X could be your energy, X could be your sense of um, your mental performance, your clarity, and how can you create the conditions in order to be able to still perform or be able to still responsibly move about your professional life while at the same time re-energizing and creating buckets where you're stacking energy on top of energy instead of pulling energy from that bank that we call energy. So I wanted to illustrate that or show that because with technology advancements, with social media, we live in a world where none of these things are going to slow down. Like none of this is going to, if anything, it's advancing. You think about things like Chat GPT and you think about AI, and there are some beautiful nuggets and aspects within artificial intelligence that can be utilized and used to assist. And there's also these aspects within artificial intelligence and media and all this technology of becoming overstimulated and just being inundated all the time with information overload that can lead to this almost like this nervous energy of feeling the need to, okay, I got to do something, or like you're in this adrenaline race of needing to go, 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 go. So I want to pause there, but just really say that it really comes down to becoming even more comfortable with space. And from that space, being able to recalibrate so that one person can know, what is their energy bank look like? What does a schedule or a daily workflow look like? Like, how is one able to tap into their own levels of balance and perform, but do so in a healthy level that is it's conducive for them. So yeah, I'll pause there and come up for air.
Yeah, I love that. And because I feel like there's a lot of people who are addicted to the adrenaline and to reprogram your brain. Like I've been at retreats where with my sister who was burnt out, she's a super busy business professional, and we would have these naps in the afternoon. And it literally was like conscious effort to relax. And so I'm curious, how do you encourage these high achievers to slow down? Like, how can you do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Um, I would love to say that it usually is a proactive aspect where, there's a certain level of, for instance, a high achiever who's reaching out saying, okay, I want to be the best. I want to be great at what it is that I'm doing, whatever the case may be. Oftentimes, what I have found, and again, this isn't true 100% of the time, but there's usually this aspect of some problem that's occurring. There's some sticky issue, there's some kind of um, aspect that is occurring that is seen with enough clarity where there's a certain level of like, okay, this isn't working. Maybe it's my energy, maybe it's my sleep, maybe it's, my mental capacity or performance isn't to the same degree that they've been used to. And usually when I work with people, when I meet them at this level, the first thing that we do is we really slow down and we simplify one or two tools just to give them a certain sense of even having the capacity to even be supported. And what I mean by that is, something as simple as a breathing exercise, a 10-minute meditation, to do that for a particular period of time, just so that their nervous systems even have a capacity to take on something that potentially could be useful for them, and then just being able to um, create the conditions so that whenever we do connect, there's no distractions. We're putting all the technology, the smartphones and the emails and all of these things to the side. And what can really occur in a slowed down space like that is that it breeds the opportunity to have so many just powerful insights. And when a person has those type of insights that can be really useful for them, and it's the insights from their own inner wisdom, it's the insights that their own body maybe has already been trying to maybe knock on the door to communicate to them, but at the same time they haven't necessarily been listening or have created the space to like fully embrace what's trying to be communicated. So a long way to answer your question is really the first thing that I see is slowing down, whether it be in a session or incorporating a mindful practice that allows the nervous system to calm down, like meditation, something that's gentle and something that's easeful to start. Because from that place, instead of stacking, other to-dos or aspects on top of a schedule that may already feel like it's overcrowded, it actually is the foundation to creating more self-awareness and then being able to navigate and have insights that may lead to them ultimately creating their own sense of shifts and support around that.
Mhm. I love that. We have the same message, and that's what I love. I love this summit because I'm inviting coaches from around the world, and we're all saying the same thing, and we're all, which is so affirming for me. It's like, yes, this is my belief system, like I know you're into meditation, you kind of retrieve back into some inner retreats as well, like I do. And I write about this in my book. The most profitable week of my year are these 10-day silent retreats where I receive the
Mm.
insight and the guidance to up level. It's like a real up level for me. And I was just speaking about that this morning, the importance of balance and how we need to put ourselves as entrepreneurs into our schedule of self-care. If I don't put myself, and that could be going for a hike, reading a good book, doing yoga, whatever brings us joy, dancing, painting, whatever brings us, back to ourselves. Um, I think it's just vital, super important to put ourselves in our own in our own schedule.
Yeah. Could I touch on something just based on what you shared, JD, as well? Um, a few years back, I went on a couple of like solo silent retreats. And it's interesting because the first time I created that as a 4-day techless retreat, it ultimately was being created from the experience of truly being in burnout. I mean, this would have been probably what, 6 years ago. And what was occurring for me at that particular time was there was some overscheduling and there was all these particular aspects. And then I had that experience of spending 4 days with myself, with no tech, with a journal, being in nature. And the only reason I mention that is because since that particular period of time, for myself, as you mentioned on the self care level, I've created this every quarter. Well, in 2022, I did an experiment of doing it every quarter where I would take 4 days and be in a solo retreat. And within that solo retreat, it's just myself, there's no technology, it's my journal. I'm reflecting on the previous quarter or 3 months of the year. I'm also seeing like what's working, what's not working, what would I love to start, stop, continue. And ever since then, like last year in 2023, I did it 3 times. And then this year in 2024, I'm also doing it 3 times. And the only reason I bring it up is because now there is a layer of doing this and it being scheduled, as you mentioned, for yourself. And it's not from a place of tiredness, of overwhelm, of fatigue. It's more so just from a place of proactivity. So the same thing I mentioned a little bit earlier around typically when I meet someone for the first time, they may be in that cycle of go, go, go. And what I've seen as individuals, as they begin to create more time and more space for themselves, myself included, it starts to become a routine. It starts to become a behavior. And there starts to be um, aspects that are created that continue to support that. So I love that you do that. I love that. I know we spoke a little bit about your book, and I know that you were leading retreats yourself. And that is ultimately whenever someone can really like own that for themselves and create the boundary of the relationship to, you know, self-care, and I'm going to take this time for myself no matter if I feel like I quotation marks need it or don't need it. It always, it builds what I like to say capital or energy in your energy bank to have that opportunity to, see with greater efficiency insights or aspects that can ultimately like reduce that learning curve or that gap as far as what it is that you ultimately want and where it is that you may be, in the process of moving towards that.
I love that you keep talking about energy bank, because yeah, it's like as entrepreneurs, we only have so much energy. We can only serve the world and help and have more impact if we ourselves are okay. And for me, I've called these the 10-day silent retreats. I don't take them every quarter, but that's brilliant. I call
Wow.
them my non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable. It's the priority in the beginning of the year where I put that in my schedule. As an entrepreneur, as entrepreneurs, we should have that freedom and choice to put ourselves in our schedule. You know, I had this week, I just feel called, I feel drawn to share this story because it really impacted me. I was out at a restaurant, which is rare, and I ran into a client from way back in the day, and he was one of my favorite clients. And he's like serial entrepreneur, like super ambitious and super loves to work and wakes up at 5. And we always talk about what personal development books we're reading. I just loved working with him. And after every class I had with him, every session, I gave him homework. And at like every time I saw him, I gave him the same homework. It was slow down, stop working, go spend time with your wife. He had this
Mm,
beautiful, gorgeous wife, just recently married. Please, like, go spend time with her. That was my homework all the time. No homework, no do more, no do. It's like, slow down, be present with her. And I just ran into him this week and I said, "Hey, how's it going? How's life?" And I asked about his life, and they got a divorce. He's like, "I work too much." And I was like, do
mm.
you remember the homework I gave you?" He's like, "Yeah, and I didn't apply it." And it's just like, so yeah, it affects our business, but it also has great impact on the people we love the most. So I think our message, Brandon, of like slowing down is just so important on so many aspects, just even in our bodies. Like, I used to, as an entrepreneur, I used to work 12-hour days, and I would feel like eating and cooking was a waste of time. I still feel like cooking is a waste of time, but I value eating healthy now as fuel
Yeah.
for my body. But just like, oh, it's a waste of time. I should be working. I should be earning money. I should be doing other things. And really just reframing, because we're these like hamsters just in this vicious cycle, in this wheel that we need to jump out of and just like make our nervous systems regulate at a new vibration. I don't know how to say it, and you probably can
Yeah,
say
no,
it better.
no, totally understood. Totally understood. And I like the example that you mentioned with the entrepreneur that you previously had worked with, because I know one of the biggest aspects, two things. One, and I'll share this, another share screen. I don't know if any other speakers have shared the screen as much as I'm sharing it here, but I'm going to share one more just tool that has been really useful, not only for myself, but for different clients. I'm not even sure if you've read this book or not, but it's called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. If you haven't, I know that you would really enjoy it. And I know that many people, especially entrepreneurs, would get a lot of value from it. So this little image here, which is just above my wall. And literally every client who I work with, this is something that, on top of reading the book, they all have printed this out and it's somewhere kind of in their office space. But it's from the book, and it's a self-awareness practice of ultimately like checking in with yourself. So we have above the line and below the line. And it's not a linear, it's not like this, okay, the goal is to be one or the other. It's more of just a self-awareness check-in practice. And when we're above the line, which is just the obviously the bolded line that's going horizontally through the image, we're open, we're curious, and we're committed to learning. If you want to call that being a certain level of flow or efficiency, I like to say when we're above the line, we're creating our days, our lives, and our experiences more from a sense of flow and more from a sense of efficiency that is actually energizing us. So that energy bank that I mentioned earlier, we're just adding energy to that actual bank. When we're below the line, we're closed off, we're defensive, and we're ultimately committed to being right. I like to use the kind of the visual of where we're kind of like our hands are up and we're just blocking everything. We're not taking anything in. We're not listening. Within our brains, our amygdala, which is just kind of our stress, our animal brain and reptilian brain is fired off. So we're very defensive. We're very much, not open to anything outside of what it is that we already know. And when we get too stressed out, or we get too, let's say, even caught up in work, and even if you love your work, maybe somebody says something to you and maybe it triggers a certain response in you. Maybe it brings up something where there's a certain level of anger or frustration. And when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're sad, we can tend to be below the line. And as I mentioned before, it's not about right or wrong morality. It's not about, okay, when I'm below the line, I'm bad, or I'm not a good person, or this is, I quotation marks, I hate being here. It's just more of having the awareness of, like, where am I? Because whenever we have that awareness of where we are at in the present moment, it creates the opportunity and the capacity for there to be a shift that occurs. So I also like to use the visual when we're below the line, we're kind of like this, we're tight and we're clenched, and there's really no room for anything to penetrate through that tightness or whatever that clench is. And when we are above the line, we're open, we're curious. There's more of a sense of a dance that is occurring because we're open to the present moment. As you mentioned a bit earlier, that's the previous speaker, like living here in the now. And I think this is one of the most powerful entry level body awareness tools that one can potentially, if they choose to, one can potentially use as a daily practice of just looking at it, and from that place asking, like, where am I? You know, and that reflective question in itself, where am I? And then honoring whatever is true. Maybe I'm below the line. Maybe I'm frustrated. Maybe I'm rushed. Maybe somebody said something. I'm becoming defensive. Or maybe I'm above the line. And then being able to have certain tools and practices to really, on a somatic or on a body awareness level, to know where certain emotions show up. you know do we hold stress or tension in the chest, or do we hold aspects within our lower back? Because as I was mentioning at the very beginning, having the body intelligence of where one is located in the present moment, and what those cues and those signals that maybe one, and we all are a part of this, that we've had since we were little kids, that maybe has been our response to certain things, whether it's from parents, whether it's from society, whether it's from teachers. Being able to have a deeper awareness of that, it really allows there to be the first option or the first opportunity to explore and to go a bit deeper. So to put a close on that, what I'll say, when I work with people, a big area of my work is working with them around the thoughts and the beliefs that are underneath the actions and the behaviors. It's almost like you think about, let's say it's like after New Year's, and someone is wanting to go on some kind of nutritional or workout plan, and they say, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to go every single day and I'm going to do this every single day. And then after a week or two, or after a month, they're like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. My body is sore, and whatever the case may be. And what I have seen, from the experience of slowing down, and in combination with looking at the different behaviors that may be leading to certain, responses or reactions, is really coming back and looking at some of those thoughts and those beliefs that are underneath that, and being able to rewire those together. Because once those are in homeostasis, and once those are in sync as well, it really becomes a superpower as far as how you show up, as far as what you're creating in the world, and ultimately how you feel and your attunement to what's going on within your own body. So, yeah.
Well, what a fun word, superpower, And also that your picture that you showed, it reminded me of the whole idea of the closed versus growth mindset. That
100%.
curiosity, that's super important that we talk about. So one thing you brought up, one word that I want to talk about, you're this leadership coach. And when you, I think you had a coach who helped you look at your blind spots. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Do you help your clients kind of see their blind spots? Like, can you say more about blind spots?
Yeah, interesting. Great question, JD. Blind spots, frankly put, it's we all have them. So even if we're meditating and we're in tune with ourselves and we read a million books a year. I mean, I've read 22 books thus far this year, and that's not a brag. It's just a matter. I love learning, and a lot of people, who I'm sure are tuning into this love learning themselves. Even with taking on these information and having a certain level of self-awareness, we all do have this thing called an ego, or we all do have certain beliefs that we may logically not even necessarily be able to see, but they could be in the way of what it is that we ultimately want without necessarily being able to see it. And there's the opportunity that over time, just from the sheer desire of continuing to grow and what I like to say, doing the work, that we're going to have this trajectory and we're going to move forward. And then there's also the aspect of having a coach, someone who reflects back to you what it is that they see. They reflect back your own language. They maybe poke at or call forth certain aspects or behaviors that you may not even be able to recognize within yourself, so that they are ultimately there for your highest growth and your absolute best version yourself. So I like to kind of bring it back to, when you think about, I'll bring this to the sports example. When you think about the top performers in any industry, and I'm going to use athletics as an example, your Michael Jordans, your Tiger Woods, your Tom Brady's. Um, I work a lot in the world of sports, so I love using these kind of examples. These are the people who are at the very, very, very top of their fields. And every single one of these people have coaches. you know a short Michael Jordan story is, whenever he first came into the NBA, he was like the third pick in the NBA draft, and he was already heralded as one of the best players in the NBA when he first came into the National Basketball Association. And there was this trainer who was just, in a sense, starting out, and he sent 15 handwritten letters to the Chicago Bulls players, this was back in the 80s, basically telling them like, hey, I'm a trainer, I'm an exercise physiologist. My job is to help, athletes um, tap into their best versions and perform at a high level. And he sent those to all 15 players on the Chicago Bulls, and only one player got back, and it was Michael Jordan. And he was already, at the time of being drafted, he was already the best player on that team. And for over 20 years, throughout not only his professional basketball career, but even afterwards, he had this particular person as a coach, to be able to reflect back in practice, to be able to say, this is what I'm seeing. I noticed that you're eating this. I noticed that you're doing this. What if we tweak this? And yeah, it's an experience that, like, coaching started in Hollywood and it started with professional athletes, but now we have this thing where different executives, you think of people at Google and Tesla and some of these Fortune 100 and 500 companies. We live in a very fast moving and a very rapidly changing world where, if you're trying to cling on to what was, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or cling on to certain things and how they were, then frankly put, you're at a disadvantage. Whereas if you're coachable, if you're open to learn, if you're open to say, hey, you know what, maybe I don't know it all, but I'm open to explore different areas within myself, then finding the right coach, or the person who you feel like you can trust, a person you feel like you can open up to, a person who is also there to bring out the best in you, it really can reduce this gap of feeling stuck, or this gap of feeling like you're off center or you're off balance, because there can be a quicker succession of insights. And then from those insights, you can take those actions to move forward on whatever that looks like for you.
And even when I had a coach, my coach, the beginning of every session would ask, do you want level one, which is like sweet and gentle, or like level 10, which I will mirror your
Yeah.
blind spots. And, every month was different. Sometimes I was not feeling good about myself. So he would be very gentle and remind me of the accomplishments I've done because I just couldn't see it. That month, I wasn't able to see it. Other months, I was strong and confident, and I was like, "Yeah, make me cry," and I would cry by the end of the coaching. Like it was always. It's fun to have a coach though to reflect back the good because sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard as entrepreneurs. Like I compare myself to other entrepreneurs, and I'm like, well, my company should be like 10 times bigger than it is now. Where I forget that I'm actually like the 2% of companies that are still in business after a decade. Like so I
Mhm.
need that encouragement too to see how far I've come. But I'm still so curious about blind spot. Like, do you have maybe with some CEOs, some business entrepreneurs, do you have like some common blind spots that you continually see that, yeah, as examples, some specific blind spots?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. Um, I won't, in full transparency, I won't say that there is the same. I feel like each person is different. So it really depends on, the individual. I will use one example of a vice president for a professional sports team who I've worked with. And during one of our sessions together, they had this, we worked around communication because they recognized for themselves that communication was something that they could see there was a need for them to be a more open and to be a more intentional communicator. And one of the things that they had communicated that was a challenge area for them was centered around another executive who they didn't see eye to eye on things. They did not necessarily, um, this particular client had beliefs that this other executive who, they're just, they're bulldogs. They don't care about human connection. They're X, Y, and Z. They have these certain beliefs around who this particular person was, and based on those beliefs, which again was a blind spot because they felt that they were right and justified with how they were perceiving this other executive who they didn't frankly get along with. And during our work together, they were able to see that ultimately the belief that they had about who this person was creating the dynamic of them actually not having an opportunity for there to be any sense of collaboration. And from some of our work together, they were able to see that what could be of use for them was opening up, creating a safe space, opening up and mindfully communicating some of the things that they are experiencing within their professional work on an emotional level, as well as just, what it is that they would love to create on a dynamic of being able to communicate moving forward. So you take the time or the belief before that as being it's not possible, that person is this way, they're that way, I don't have I'm not able to relate with them, they're insufferable, whatever the case may be, to having this openness where it's not even about the other person, it's about anchoring into self. And you as a leader, what do you need for yourself in order to be able to tap deeper into the experience of being aware of the different emotions, of the different aspects that may be present for you? And short story, short version, long story, they created a dynamic where they created a discussion with this other leader. And from that discussion, they had a 3 year, in a sense, contingent relationship. It completely shifted just like that. They opened up and shared some things that were present for them, some of the different struggles they had, some of the different aspects that they were experiencing. And that leader felt like it created a dynamic in them where they felt open to actually share aspects that they were experiencing as well. And that created more of a trust and more of a deeper understanding between both of them. So it wasn't just about numbers and figures and an ROI 100% of the time. It was also about being seen and just having this awareness of, you know what, I'm going to open myself up and be authentic, be true to some things that may feel vulnerable, and that in itself creating the condition and the opportunity, for there to be greater collaboration, for there to be greater performance and greater productivity. So that's one thing that comes to mind, um, to answer your question. And just to add one other brief note on it, I would say one thing that I do see is this belief, and it's a belief that I tend to challenge with my work, is that you have to work hard. You have to work hard in order to be, quotation marks, successful. And if that's the belief, hard work equals success, then it doesn't matter how much you make, how much you do, how much you perform, whatever the case may be, you will always be at a deficit, because there'll be this certain level of, well, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not working hard enough. I like to challenge that from a place of, you can work smart and work efficient and create work in a way where it's uplifting, where you can thrive both professionally, but that also coming from a sense of personally as well, infusing those two together, which is ultimately at the foundation and the crux of my work.
Hmm. Exactly. I came with that programming as a young girl.
Yeah, me
had
too.
to work extremely hard for my money, and something shifted where it was like, oh, once I started working less, I was earning more money because I created space for creativity, a time to manage my money, a time to look for better investments, time to start new projects and new companies, and like just creating this space. Anyway, so I love talking about that too. But yeah, it's like I hear you say the blind beliefs that we come in with business. But I feel like I could talk with you all
Yeah.
day, Brandon. This is so fun. How can people maybe share how people can contact you if you have a website, whatever way, ideally
Yeah.
through LinkedIn, the best way people can find you?
Yeah, the best way would be on my website. It's just my first and last name.com. Brandon Bennett, Brandon, B as in boy, ENNETT.com. There's articles on there. There's a way to reach out to me if something resonates and you want to connect with me directly. I'm kind of on this game of no social media, which I haven't really been on for the past year and a half. So I'm still honoring that for the time being. So my website is a good starting point, and then you can find out more about me via that way.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy I met you in Costa Rica, and I hope to see you in person when I'm in Costa Rica next.
Yeah, sounds good and looking forward to it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Cheers.